G'day everyone. Welcome to the Outback Packers podcast, the podcast where two mates from across the world have a yarn talking Packers football in the green and gold. I'm Nick Gregory, joined by my co-host, as always, Joe Pearson, this week covering a second consecutive win against the defending Super Bowl champions, the LA Rams, and taking a look at how we might be able to run the table going into Miami next week. I never thought we would be here after that kind of middle stretch of the season, but there really is a chance that we actually make it into this thing.
There's always a chance. I never gave up hope. Everybody else gave up hope. But as long as there's not mathematically out of it, you can never say never. Because I remember the 2010-11 season in the Super Bowl championship. Everybody pretty much had counted the Packers out, and then they got hot at the right time and went all the way. Now, am I saying they're going to go all the way? I doubt it. But when it's any given Sunday, as long as they got a chance.
Well, I don't know. I'm never say never. I mean, I would be very, very shocked if we win it. But I think it kind of speaks to just like how open the conference is this year. And because really, it's Philly and everyone else. All the other teams are just so up and down. I feel like they're the only one that's really consistent. I mean, so we'll see. I mean, like the vision that I kind of want to see in the playoffs, if we do get in as the seven, is Minnesota gets that second seed, and then the playoff game is against Minnesota, and we beat them, and that would be like cool. I'm done. That's all I needed. I'll be pretty happy with that.
Yeah, I mean, how lucky can one team get than what the Vikings have been getting this whole year? But Philly might be in trouble because I guess Jalen Hurts may be out this coming week with a strange throwing shoulder. So it's going to be the Minshew show. So, they still got a great defense, but.
Yeah, I mean, but they're lucky in Philly because they literally have the best supporting cast of any team in the NFL. The options that they have there and like the strengths of the O line, I think it's not. There will be a drop off with Minshew, but I think that like they're still going to be a very good team with Minshew at the helm.
Yeah, but he could still screw it up for him. So I mean, anybody can screw up any team. But yeah, when you don't have the main guy you've had all year, there's always a shot that you struggle. But there you go again. Yeah. How crazy would it be for them to, let's say Jalen Hurts is out for the rest of the year and Minshew leads them all the way to the Super Bowl, similar to the last Super Bowl that they won.
Nick Foles. I wouldn't be mad. I have a real soft spot for Minshew. I mean, it's something yeah.
No, I just going to say I really have no feelings, bad or good, for Minshew. I mean, he's just another guy. I mean, I know he really seemed to turn it on down at Jacksonville and then got the short end of the stick on that going, but I really have nothing. Neither good nor bad for Gardner.
That whole period of like the Minshew mania thing was just like hilarious and like so much fun to be a part of. I think, it would be pretty funny. Something I kind of want to talk about here is just like, staying in our division, kind of the shape of the Lions. I mean, I mentioned before in this podcast that I have a very soft spot for the Lions, but they're not just like that cute team that has a good offense. They're actually like a legitimately like very good team at the moment. And like, depending how much stock you put into this, they've been third in DVOA over the past month, and after that 1-6 start, they now put up 6-1 following that, and they're hot. They're probably like one of, if not the hottest teams in the NFL right now.
Just imagine what would happen if they actually got a quarterback.
I mean, Jared Goff has been playing very, very well this year.
Yeah, but he's been playing way above his normal standards too. So, I mean, I'm not going to bank on him to be their franchise quarterback going forward. But could you imagine if they had a legit quarterback there?
Yeah, I think depending on who they end up drafting next year, I think the Texans are probably going to take Bryce Young at the top there. But but the funny thing is that the rumor, the word around the locker room is that they don't necessarily view Goff as a bridge quarterback, and we'll see how true that is going into next year. But I mean, the way he's been playing this year, I'll be happy to ride with him for another year and to see how you get to the next draft class, because that one is a lot stronger than this one. I feel like there's only probably 2 or 3 guys that I'd really like to draft in that top 5 area this year. Then next upcoming draft.
Yeah, but see, Goff did the same thing with the Rams. He put up one good year and then he kind of shit the bed after that. So that's why I said I don't know how much I can put in behind Goff. So I would. I mean, if they think he's their guy, then more power to him. But I would rather see them draft somebody and let Goff be a bridge or a gap holder or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it's just cool to kind of see. And look, that I think depending on how everything else shapes out, obviously, it's really it's us versus them in that Week 18 matchup to who will get in the playoffs. And I mean, what an ending to the season with both of these teams kind of struggling throughout and having highs and lows the whole season. And then if we both win out in that last game, is this Lions versus Packers, and the Lions have gotten so much better. I think that would just be such a fun way to end the season.
It would be. I mean, I'm not gonna say it's not. It's gonna suck because I would rather see both teams somehow end up in the playoffs, just because I think one or the other is gonna wreck house on wreck somebody's year by being the underdog and the Rocky story. Somebody's gonna pipe some Eye of the Tiger in there and push
Eye of the Lion. Well, with that, let's get into the game review. I mean, look, we're recording just like 3 hours after the game's just finished, so it's still very fresh. I don't know about you, like my take on the broadcast was quite like on and off. It wasn't very good across all like the streaming services I could find here in Australia, so I was kind of in and out the whole game. But I mean, it was actually like it's just this funny thing where LaFleur is supposed to be a like disciple of McVay, which I don't really personally believe, but he's supposed to be this guy who's come
he
and
comes
learned
from
from
the
McVay. I would say he's a Shanahan guy, is what I would say. But anyway,
he is, but so is McVay.
Yeah, but it's so funny in all these matchups that they've played together since he's come to Green Bay. He's won every single one, and even when the Rams have been very good, they've never held up against this Packers team run by Matt LaFleur, and it's just funny to get the third or fourth win now against them.
But it seems like LaFleur always plays his friends, as I use quotes on a non-viewable episode. But he always seems to play his friends tough. So I don't know if it's just because he wants to rub it in their face that I've got this job and you don't, or it's just to prove it to himself that he can do it. But yeah, it's weird. But I didn't get to watch the first quarter of the game, so I had to listen to it, which isn't bad because I love Larry and Wayne. And I guess Wayne kept saying that the uniforms that the Rams were playing, the combination of the white jerseys and the blue pants, the Rams have never won in that combination. So I was getting real scared because I was like, man, Wayne keeps saying this, and they're gonna end up friggin' just blowing the Packers out. But luckily they kept the streak going, so and obviously he's probably done more research into it than I have, so he's gonna know a little bit more about it. But I thought that was a pretty neat, pretty interesting take about not being able to win in that combination of uniforms.
That's pretty funny actually. I think they won the Super Bowl last year, but not to be the sore loser or whatever. I think that if we had just beaten that San Francisco team, I think that our path to the Super Bowl last year would have been not easy, but we would have. I would have felt comfortable with our ability to beat any of those teams. I mean, that Rams team, look, they won the Super Bowl. I can't really talk much smack, but I wasn't really a big believer in them throughout the season. And when we wiped the floor with them in the middle of the season, I see no reason why we couldn't have done that again in the playoffs. I mean, they almost lost to San Francisco themselves. And, they got quite lucky with a lot of things. And even in the Super Bowl, as every team does, they got quite lucky. And I think with all the hyper aggressiveness that this team kind of represents, and what happened with all their resources, I think this was always going to be a worse team. But they can be very hot and cold sometimes. I think they're very similar to the Packers in that regard.
Yeah, but it's the same thing that I keep saying all the time, and I mean, it's not just my saying; it's everybody's saying. But any given Sunday, That's what makes the NFL so rough. I don't know what gambling is like for you guys down there when it comes to the NFL, but I've got a guy that I work with that is a heavy gambler, and he hates trying to bet the NFL because anything can happen. You know, we've seen it before. Anything can free. I mean, just to go back to a little bit of yesterday's games, the Jaguars beat the Cowboys on a pick six in overtime. So I mean, anything can happen at any point, and it just throws everything off.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just pulling up my, looking through my betting sheet because I used to be very in on it, and like you said, it's very unpredictable. I mean, it's not as bad as the NBA, I'll tell you that, but um, yeah, every given Sunday, and like that's the beauty of this league. That's why I love this league so much, is because the parity and everything is always changing. You know, it's like not like a basketball where it's continually the same teams every single year. They're so good, and you know, I think yeah, like that's what makes it so great. And you know, if we do get into the playoffs, that's why that's what makes it fun. And the 49ers last year, I think I think the Bengals last year, I think are the perfect example of that. I mean, they were a very good team, and they shouldn't have necessarily been in the Super Bowl. Depending on like how you view the rest of the AFC. I mean, the Bills were quite good last year, and the Chiefs are always good. And like they kind of managed to make it into the Super Bowl. So fingers crossed for the same magic for us this year. But
I mean, I'm not gonna hold my breath that it's gonna happen, but I'm not gonna boo boo it either. I hope it happens because that would be great. I think here's my thought process that if the Packers do win the Super Bowl, I think Rodgers will retire. So I mean,
yeah,
I'm kind of one of those things where I want to see it happen because I want Rodgers to get that ring and then be gone, so we don't have any more of the drama. But then I'd hate to see the end of an era and he actually retires.
mm. Yeah. I mean, I like this. I'm entirely on the love train. So if you're retired, I'm cool with it. Like,
Well, I mean, I'm gonna support whoever's there, but you know, you're also quite a bit younger than I am, and I've been through all the years of my very first memories of football. I do remember Mikowski, so I do have
yeah,
just the faint memories of the Magic Man. So,
Magic
but
Man.
other than outside of that, my whole memories are just basically Brett Favre into Aaron Rodgers. So I
Yeah,
mean, it would be kind of, and I've been on the Rodgers train since the day they drafted him. So it would be it like I said, it would be an end of an era because basically we've had two straight GOAT quarterbacks,
yeah,
and you
yeah.
never know what the future goes from there. I'm not going to say Love's not going to be good, but we can't also say that we're going to have a third.
Going
A,
quarterback.
yeah, I don't see it happening. I don't know. I really don't see it happening.
Yeah,
So yeah, as much as I would love to see him win the Super Bowl and Rodgers go out on a high note, I also don't want to see the train to end.
yeah, sure, yeah. So I guess we've kind of talked like a little bit like off the game here, but I mean, how did you feel about the performance of this game as a whole?
Overall, it was all right. I mean, I'm happy they won, but it goes to show the Packers only played a half again,
Yeah, for
and
sure.
I think that's been the problem for the last couple years is they only play like a half a game. More so this year because of the losing record, but it for a guy who came in saying all gas no fucking brake, right now we're all brake no fucking gas. So it just from and the offense was playing well. It was great to see Dobbs and Watson out there together because they both were doing pretty well. It sucks that Watson's streak of touchdowns kind of ended.
Yeah,
There
yeah,
was there was the one interception by that Rodgers threw, which this is the first time since 2010 that Rodgers has thrown 10 interceptions in a season.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't get to watch that point, so I don't know what the route was. I don't know whose fault it
Yeah.
was.
So look, the play was leak. So basically, Lazard comes out, like fakes being a blocker, goes out to the side, and so Rogers throws the ball while Lazard is like full sprint, and he doesn't. What I saw is that Taylor Rapp, the safety, is coming over, and Lazard's here, and he's trying to like lead him, and I think he doesn't entirely notice the safety, he doesn't see him, and Lazard does because he's right in front of him, obviously, and he kind of like slows up a bit, but the ball is still going to where Lazard would have been if he was still running, and I mean the safety picks it, but if Lazard had ran into there, I think there's probably quite a low chance he catches the ball anyway, and it's like basically a hospital pass. I mean, Lazard said after the game that he said he put it on himself, and the people who are in that room are the only ones who know. But yeah, I mean, definitely like not ideal what you want to see from your offense. What should be a very easy play theoretically.
Right, and like I said, I didn't get to see that part of it, so I can't make any judgments on it. But I mean, for a guy who's pretty good about not throwing interceptions, that's been kind of his downfall this year. Mm-hmm. The offensive line had its moments. I think this was the first time all year that Yosh and Zach Tom had kind of down games. So, and it wasn't horribly down, but I think they gave up a few more sacks than they probably would have normally, if you want to call it normally. It's hard for me to grade the game because, like I said, it was for the half that the offense and defense actually came out and played, I would probably give it a B plus. But then the other half, I would probably give it a C minus, maybe a D plus, just because that's how hot and cold it ran.
Yeah, no, for sure. I would definitely agree. It's like kind of the story of like this whole roster is just like high variance and not a whole lot of consistency. I mean, like if you think about like who are like who was like the most reliable player on each side of the ball, I think if you ask 10 people, you get 10 different answers. I mean, there's not really any players that you rely on this team at the moment. Bakhtiari is always injured. Aaron Jones doesn't even get the ball half the time. Christian Watson's still a rookie. Aaron Rodgers has been injured as well this season. The defense.
John Runyon Jr.
He's been good most of the year, but he has had a lot of low points as well. Still not super consistent. I love him, but he hasn't been super consistent this year.
Yeah, but you never really hear his name called, and usually that's what you want to see out of an offensive lineman. You don't want to hear his name because usually when you hear their name, they're doing something not good.
Yeah, there was that game. Was it 2 weeks before the game before the Bears? That was like not a very good game from him. And guys like Josh Myers. I love Josh Myers, but he's like the epitome of inconsistent. Play to play, he can be two different people. It's kind of like bewildering to watch sometimes. But
so the thing about Josh Myers is he's laid more. How do I want to put this without being the grammar police hitting me? I think he's laid better blocks against his own people than he has against the opposing defenses, which is kind of funny in a way because you shouldn't be blocking your own guy. You should be blocking the defense.
Theoretically.
I think Go ahead. I was just going to say, I think there's been one time in every game that he's put a block against his own player.
Yeah. And it's funny because, the whole reason, or theoretically, that we drafted him was because he was this incredibly intelligent player. And he is. I think he is like a very good player in spots. But yeah, he's just very up and down. Like you said, there's that very funny play from earlier in the year where he's like, he's come around and there's like a pulling blocker and he's like pushing the other guy out of the way. I think he's such like a athletic guy and like he moves guys so well on the second level. The linebackers and like the safeties that come down. But yeah, I mean I don't think he's ever really going to be a guy who's like it's like moving defensive linemen out of the way on his own. But like you said, it's just quite funny to watch sometimes.
So yeah, I guess if you want to say that there's nobody on the team that's really been consistent. I still stick with Runyon. I mean, he's had some down moments, but I think he's been pretty consistent over the whole year. So I don't know, but the
Mm.
game as a whole is just rough. It, I mean, which is sad to say considering the Packers won. But and there are a lot of good things that come out of it. I mean, AJ Dillon seemed to continue his streak. Watson, even though his TD streak went out the window, he still put up some solid catches. I know Rodgers was sitting Dobbs pretty early.
Mm-hmm.
Aaron Jones was doing pretty good. The defense, Quay Walker looked like a maniac out there,
Mm.
which isn't always great. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. I mean, it's hit or miss with him, but he seemed to be playing pretty good.
Yeah, and like as a rookie, he hit 100 plus tackles, which as someone who it wasn't even like the main starter for like probably a good third of the season, it's actually quite impressive.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, how do I want to put this? It's impressive, but it also kind of sucks because that means he's been having to do more than what. How do I want to put this? Because that just sounded bad. He's not
I think
getting he's not
it's
getting
just
the
that on its
productive
own is not super
tackles.
helpful.
Yeah, he's
Yeah, I
not
mean
getting the
it's a
productive
mix.
tackles.
Yeah, it's a mix. I think he's again like we talked about the kind of inconsistency. Like when he flashes, you're like whoa, you know. He's like that play where he comes through and you know was it like the sack? No, the tackle for loss on the running back, and he just comes screaming through the line and throws him 3 yards behind line scrimmage.
And he almost had 2 interceptions. I wish he
Hmm.
would have come down with the interceptions. One of them could have
Yeah,
easily been a pick six.
easily. Yeah, yeah.
I mean, it's coming together for him. I wish he would have, and I should stress what I mean by productive tackle because you always want your guy to tackle, but it's a thing that Packers fans always complained about with guys like Blake Martinez and Jake Ryan and AJ Hawk was yeah, they would get the tackles, but it was tackles 6 or 7 yards down the field. He's
Mm.
not getting the tackles for losses. He's not getting the stops on the, at the line of scrimmage. He's not getting those productive tackles. He's getting the cleanup tackles later down the field. So
Mm.
it's gonna come. He's still young. He's 21, going 22. So
Yeah. He's still quite a young player. Yeah.
it's gonna come for him, and that's the one thing that's gonna suck about changing defensive coordinators if it happens. I mean, I'm still on the fence on about whether or not it's going to happen or not.
Mm.
But not now. Don't get me wrong. I think it should because I think Joe Barry's run his course, and
But
they
whether or not
definitely
they
need to
will,
change. Yeah, whether or
yeah.
not LaFleur is going to pull the trigger on it or not is a different
Hmm.
story. But Joe Barry is a linebacker coach. And you can tell by a lot of the production that they've been getting out of their linebackers that he's had an effect on it. So that's gonna be the one major downfall about replacing him.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, it was very interesting to see how, because like I said before, a lot of the players have kind of regressed on this team this year. It'd be very interesting to see what happens next year because Dre had a career with Joe Barry. Russell Douglas had his career with Joe Barry. And a lot of these players didn't look bad last year, especially. It would just be very interesting because even the transition from Patton to Barry, a lot of players looked very different and they get used differently. Even if a scheme is relatively similar, a new defensive coordinator will definitely have different ideas on what is best for this team.
Yeah, but something that Todd kind of pointed out on the episode he was on a couple weeks ago was that Devondre and Razul were kind of playing for their careers. So
Hmm.
they had to play out of their minds in order to get that contract to keep their career going. So now we're starting to see the regression from them, and I'm not going to say they're horrible, but they haven't played like they played last year.
For sure, yeah, for
And
sure.
so, but you're right. The whole defense has pretty much regressed, but you're still getting play out of linebackers somewhat. I mean, Isaiah McDuffie, when he's been in the game, he's been pretty solid. Quay's
Hmm.
started coming on. Inigbare's been pretty good as a fifth round rookie coming in, filling in Rashawn Gary's spot. I think he almost had an interception in this game too. And he had what, 1.5 sacks, 1 sack.
Hmm.
So I mean, he's really come into his own. Preston had a hell of a night. So I mean, these guys have had pretty solid years considering what the defense as a whole has been.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely the linebacker position is so much better than it was, in the Patton days. I mean, who did we even have spelling Blake Martinez? And obviously Jake Ryan was injured that 2017 season. I can't even remember who was behind Blake Martinez.
I'm trying to remember. I know 1 year it was Jamal Crawford.
Yeah, that's right. We had those guys. One of them was from the Giants.
BJ
BJ Goodson. Yeah,
Goodson. Uh, then there was
the
what was
other
the
one.
Wisconsin Beagle, Vince
Um,
Beagle.
yeah, yeah, and was it? No, it wasn't Corey Tuma. No, was that one of the guys we signed? Oh,
I
it's
don't
just like
remember. It's been
it was
too
they
long.
were just they were all so bad.
So I mean, yeah, I get what you're saying, but if you think about it, who was the last solid inside linebacker the Packers have had?
Well, exactly, and I think Blake. I don't think he was a bad player, but I think especially with the way Patton wanted to use him, I just think he was not a very good match.
Yeah, but yeah, you're right. But here's also the sad thing: is now that we learned he's turned into a Pokemon card person, and as soon as he sold his big card, he was retired.
Is that a thing? Is that a real thing?
You never heard that? He was with the
No.
Raiders and he sold this huge, or I mean, this expensive card, a Pokemon card or Pokemon. I sounded like a friggin' grandpa that moment. Pokemon card
Pikachu card.
for like $650,000, and he retired.
Jesus Christ. Oh, fair enough. Good for him. He was a nice guy. I really like him as a personality.
But to kind of answer my own question, the last solid inside linebacker the Packers probably had was Nick Barnett.
Clay Matthews filling in at linebacker.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, I would like to say AJ Hawk, but even AJ Hawk struggled because he didn't have that speed for inside linebacker.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, we'll definitely see. I mean, something that was kind of cool about this game was Devontae Wyatt did get in some snaps of his own.
Now, did he
From
get
a bit of,
credited with half a sack?
let's have a look. Let's have a look.
Because I know, was it him and one of the linebackers hit Baker behind the line of scrimmage, but Baker was scrambling.
Hmm.
So I don't know. Did he get credit for half a
Yeah,
sack?
yeah, he did. He did. Nice. Good for him. Good for
It's
him.
a start. I mean, the big worry about, well, there were two big concerns about him after the draft. One was his age, obviously being 24, being drafted in the first round, and the other was he had a domestic against him in college,
Yeah,
and that had
yeah.
some concerns with him on that. So I mean, yeah, it's pretty solid seeing him start actually coming around earlier than
Mm.
3 years down the line.
Yeah, and like coming into the draft, it was like Jordan Davis, like not really versus, but like you kind of like pick which one you want. Jordan Davis is always that big, high potential, but it will come in immediately as like the big boy in the middle, the run stopper, which he basically is the Eagles' run defense as a rookie, which is quite funny to see. And Devontae Wyatt was always that guy who was like the pass rusher, also an athletic freak. Um, and like that's kind of like something that would be theoretically so exciting next to Kenny Clark, another real like actual impressive like physical penetrator in that line. Because the guys who are next to him, I mean, Jaron Reed is better than Larry. I mean, kind of, but like, even when Larry's been good, I don't think he's ever been that kind of like reliable. penetrating threat. And so, like, there's that quote, like a couple months ago about, Wyatt is still, quote, learning to be a professional from good. And, whatever the hell that means, I hope that, yeah, he gets to do that while also being on the field. Because I think, yeah, like I said last time, he was one of my draft crushes.
Like I said, he had that domestic against him, and that was I didn't even look at him prior to the draft.
I was shocked they drafted him. Yeah.
Yeah, I really didn't think the Packers were going to take him because of his history. So I couldn't tell you what his college tape would say about him. But, hey, if they think the flags are, if they can justify them, then go for it. So, and like I said last week with when Jacob was on and you guys were giving me a hard time about the Amari thing, I'm not going to give up on a guy. He's a Packer. We've had some pretty shitty Packers throughout the years, and I still stood behind them no matter what.
Yeah, sure. I mean, we'll see, because it's not like he's been a bad player when he's on the field. It's just that he just doesn't get very many snaps.
It makes me wonder if part of the reason why Kylan Hill got released was something to do with him.
Oh, for sure. I think that's definitely what it was. Because, I don't know if you listened to that press conference, but I think something like Matt LaFleur said something along the lines of, it's a privilege to be a Packer. You don't get to be here just by showing up to work. You need to own your role, even if it is as a backup. I think that's kind of was like the gist of what he said.
Right, and I think a lot of people took he was mad that, he wasn't getting any playing time. But I wonder if something happened attitude-wise, and Devontae was kind of part of it, and this was a wake-up call for both of them. Because it's kind of weird that Kylan Hill hasn't been picked up by anybody.
Yeah, that's true.
And now that Kylan's gone, Devontae's kind of been getting a little bit more playing time. So maybe Devontae's kind of saw that, hey, maybe I need to change my attitude about things and get play. I don't know. I could be completely making shit up off the top of my head too. But it's kind of a weird coincidence that that's how things worked.
Yeah. We're not part of the locker room, so I guess it's very hard to theorize and stuff. But we'll see. I'm very hopeful to see his career as kind of this season progresses, because I think he has a potential to kind of be Kenny Clark's buddy if Kenny Clark is sticking around.
The problem is they need to stop using Kenny as the nose tackle. Kenny needs to be moved to end and just feast from the end position. I think nose tackle has really wasted his potential on everything. He did have a good game tonight for the most part. I heard his name called quite a few times, getting into the backfield or disrupting plays and whatever. And I think the only way that you're going to get him more to the end position, obviously you got to get somebody as the nose, which everybody hopes that it's Slayton. But the other thing is you got to get Dean Lowry the hell out of there. Dean's a good guy. He's done everything they asked him to, but he just can't play. I don't know how many times I was seeing him get thrown around out there tonight.
Yeah. That season when I think it was that first season with Patton, and it was, Kenny Clark, Mo Wilkerson, and Mike Daniels. I think, I was so excited for that. And I think that, Kenny being the nose is kind of it's just kind of, because he was so good and he just, he was at nose. I think he's kind of ended up staying there because the guys around him were just so average and they didn't have the ability to move in themselves. So yeah, I totally agree. I've always thought that he'll be better at 3 tech, and because he is a bit of a smaller guy at nose tackle. He doesn't have the stature of TJ Slayton. I think even if TJ Slayton is just average player who can just fill in at a replacement level like Rudy Ford, and then you get Kenny coming on the guard, I think that'd be I think that's an ideal situation for him.
Agreed. So I don't know how much more I got to talk about this game. I
Yeah,
think we've covered all the bases pretty much on it. I
yeah.
mean,
Well,
maybe a couple other things like AJ Dillon left the game under the concussion protocol.
mm,
He didn't look like he was out of it, but I think it was more the NFL, the what they call them, the red caps. They're not team doctors. They're
like
either
the ground doctors.
yeah. They took him out of the game. We did talk about the interception. Rudy Ford. Rudy Ford with the really stupid penalty. I don't know what he was thinking. And I think even Lafleur called him. You could see they called him out on, or he called him out on it there because he just kept tapping his head. What the hell are you thinking? And it's a good thing it didn't hurt the Packers for anything, but you can't make those mental mistakes. And I know you texted me during the game because you heard it too that Buck and Aikman were saying that the Packers are tied
Mm.
for the most personal foul penalties.
It was unnecessary roughness, which is just so
That's it.
bizarre because I can't really recall that many unnecessary roughness penalties. Maybe two,
I
maybe, but
don't.
not six.
Yeah, I don't remember a lot of them either, but hey, it happens, I guess. And I know that's
Yeah.
been an emphasis on officiating throughout the season.
Mm. Yeah. I'm ready to talk about this Miami game. Um, this is a game that even before the season started, I was very, very excited to watch. I mean, even just on paper, like our defense is struggling and whatever, but Miami is such an exciting team on paper, and the guys that they have, even with Tua being somewhat of a limp arm quarterback or whatever, he's a good operator in his own system, and Mike McDaniel is a fantastic offensive coach. The threat of Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, who both exceptional receivers, especially Hill, obviously, I think this is going to be it's going to be a shootout, and like their defense is not the greatest defense in the world either. They're very hot and cold too. I think it has the potential to be quite a fun back and forth game.
Okay, what the hell was up with Mike McDaniel's at their practice the other day? He he had the sweatpants on, but the legs rolled up to his knees, and he was strutting around like he was trying to be a gangster. And yeah, I don't know. It was really weird. But this guy's whiter than white. He didn't look right.
I think yeah, he's definitely got a fun personality. He's definitely that kind of like the cool coach, the young coach. I love him. I love everything about the way that he kind of approaches that. And there's the story about when he comes on and tours like oh, I'm not really too sure if I'm like good or I'm struggling whatever. And he's like Mike Daniel comes in and he's like, no, I'm telling you you're good. Here's like hours of film that I've spent collating just to show you how good you are and how like what specifically you were good at. I think that's such like an amazing way to insert yourself into a room. And I think I hope he's around there for a while because they've been such a fun team to watch this year.
I do have to give him credit that when they were prep, who'd they play this week?
They played the Bills.
Okay, so yeah, they went up to Buffalo and it was supposed to be super cold. So to prep during practice, he had the facility air conditioner dropped down to like 40 degrees so they could get at least a little bit of cold time. So I do have to give him credit there that he did have an idea to try to help prep, but 40 degrees was still not cold enough.
Not cold enough for Buffalo. Yeah. Yeah, I mean like Winter has been on. I mean, yeah, they've been practically unstoppable. Like coming into the season, especially when we had Stokes there, I think it would have been so interesting to see how, because Jair is a fast guy as well. Him and Stokes against Hill and Waddle, who are both very, very fast receivers. I think that would have been quite interesting to kind of see how that unfolded. I think Hill against Alexander is quite a fun matchup because we haven't really seen a lot of it one on one, because no one really plays man against the Dolphins. And against the entire when Tyreek Hill is on the field, he barely ever sees man coverage because it's not like a thing. You can't really defend him one on one like that. Um, I think it would be so funny to see how we deal with it. It's a shame that our safeties are playing so terribly this year. I mean, Adrian Amos, we should have mentioned in this game, just like absolutely cooked at this point. He's just like his speed is not there, and the play where he doesn't even get his head around. It's just like it's pretty brutal to see.
That one was kind of a rough one. I do, and I hate to say this because I don't like these guys, but Aikman and Buck did make a good point that, I think it was 2-2 that on the play that you're talking about kind of played into it a little bit to draw the call on him. But yeah, he didn't. Amos didn't get his head around. Now he did have a couple of solid plays where he looked like the Amos of old, but who knows what that's going to be. The safety position is going to be really weird next year. So
Yeah, I was of the opinion that they should have drafted a safety in the first round. My guy that I wanted to be drafted was Lewis Seen. If they had gone with like like Devontae Wyatt and then Lewis Seen, or like a Carl Loftus and Seen, I think that would have been fantastic because of this. Because he had lost a step last year as well, but it was a little bit easier to cover up because everyone else was also playing like a bit better, and Darnell Savage wasn't like in total liability last year. But this year, now that he doesn't have as much help and he's probably dropped off even more physically, I hate to say it because he has been one of my like most loved and favorite players in his time here, but he's just not there anymore, man.
well, like I said, it's going to be interesting to see how they do the safeties next year because I think one of the contracts that they can save a lot of space with is the Amos contract,
Yeah.
and they're already on the hook for the 5th-year option for Savage. But I could see them, I know I've said this before, but I could see them going the haha route with him, picking up the
Yeah,
fifth
he has
year.
to get
But
traded.
yeah, so but after that, there's really nobody. I mean, Tariq Carpenter was drafted this past draft, but he's been
Yeah, he's
nowhere.
more of a linebacker. He's more of like a hybrid linebacker than a safety.
Rudy Ford's been all right, but that's something that, like we mentioned earlier in the episode, where he's playing for his football career, so of course he's going to be playing like a madman to earn that contract. So do you risk it by giving him a ton of money, or do you find somebody to fill a spot? So, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, this game's going to be interesting. I agree that I wish we had Stokes, but then again, I don't because Stokes was even a liability before he got hurt. I wish we had the Stokes from last year.
Mm-hmm.
I really hope we don't play a lot of zone because that seems to be when the Packers get burnt a lot, is playing
But there's
zone.
not really an alternative though. You can't really play man all the time against Waddle and Hill.
You can't, but like I said, look at all the times the Packers get burnt. It's usually when they're playing, soft zone, and that's exactly what Barry's going to play is soft zone.
Mm-hmm.
So I I wish the game was at Lambeau. I would be more confident if the game was at Lambeau, but I'm less confident with it
Yeah.
down in Florida.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like one of the things, like explaining to kind of people here who don't know much about football, like explaining to them how the Miami Stadium is built, so that like if it's hot, the opposing team is intentionally like directly in the sun. I find that like hilarious.
Yeah, a lot of teams do that. Kind of to get off topic a little bit, but the University of Iowa does something like that. But the old coach Hayden Fry painted the visiting locker rooms pink
Mm-hmm.
because he had a psychology professor at the University of Iowa. He sat down with him and said, "What would be a good way to, you know, I guess, kind of mess with the opposing team?" And they said paint the locker room pink because that is a soft tone, so that makes you more relaxed and less likely to, you're going to be more
Mm-hmm.
relaxed than you are hard nosed, ready to kill. You're going to be
Yeah,
like, okay,
sure.
well, I want to cuddle. So that's so yeah, teams do that all the time with their. And I think another thing that I think Green Bay does it a little bit, but I know the University of Iowa does it, is where they cut the visiting sidelines in half, where you've got this giant
Right.
sideline for the home team, but the visiting sideline is like cut in half, and they're a lot closer to the fans. So
Right. Yeah.
yeah, it's crazy how these teams do that stuff and can get away with it.
I love it though. I mean, it's like it's home field advantage for a reason. I mean, within reason. I think like like the Vikings like pumping in noise to their stadium. I think that's fucking lame. But
Oh yeah, but a
yeah,
lot of teams do that. Even Seattle did that. Do you think
that's
their 12th man was real?
I mean, I think anything that's like, yeah, like we have to like fake crowd involvement. I think it's pretty fucking lame. But like, yeah, things like like yeah, like designing the stadium to get more sunlight on the away team. I think that is just so hilarious and so like just like the fact that they designed the stadium like that intentionally. I just think that's amazing. And like, yeah, it's yeah, because they're very good teams who have lost games because of that, because of the hot weather, and because they don't know how to handle it. So I think it's quite. Yeah,
Well, the
I think it's fun.
Packers are a perfect example of it. The Packers are a very
Mm-hmm.
poor team in Florida.
Yeah,
And I think
yeah.
that's why I said this is one reason I wish the game was at Lambeau, because I would feel more confident about it.
Mm. This game, I want to quickly touch on this before we get to the our guys and overrunners and stuff. This game, this is probably the toughest game remaining on our schedule. I mean, I don't know how you feel about the Vikings against us, but I think once if when we're talking about in terms of running the table, 3 games left. We got Miami, then we got Minnesota, and then we have the the Lions. Sorry, to finish the season. I mean, how do you feel about our chances of winning this game? I think currently we're like a 6 point underdog.
Any given
It'll be hard.
Sunday, it is. Any given Sunday, I mean, anything could happen.
Mm-hmm.
I like I keep repeating, I'm less confident because it's in Miami, but who knows? Rodgers could come out and light up the world. We did see a little bit of the Watson Dobbs combination against the Rams. Maybe that'll continue to build. Old man Cobb still got a little bit of life in him. Even Big Dog had a catch tonight.
Mm.
So, and who knows? Maybe it's the DeGuara coming out party we've all been kind of waiting for.
Yeah.
So, and I can't really tell you what Miami's defense is like. I really am not sure on that. I don't follow them too closely, but I would have to imagine they're going to cover pretty heavily on Watson, which will leave maybe Dobbs and Cobb open a little bit more. And I really love that Watson's turned into that weapon that teams have to keep an eye out for now.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would say as long as the offensive line holds up and gives Rodgers time to make plays, they'll have a chance. But as we keep beating the dead horse, they can't play just a half a game. They're going to have to play a full game.
Mm-hmm. No, totally. This is a game that will demand their full involvement and like effort because yeah, like they won't be able to get away with like what they did this game. They won't be able to get away with just playing a half game. Totally agree.
And they have to, both sides of the ball have to play a whole game, not just like the offense plays one half and the defense plays another half. And that doesn't equal one full game. They both had to play a full game.
Math, yeah, I
Yeah,
agree.
quick maths.
So my guy for this game, being as it is going to be like a shootout, I was kind of thinking like who was going to either stop them or going to win the game for the Packers. I think he's been kind of up and down this season. I think if Jair Alexander can make it a game that's just about Jalen Waddle, or if he can just like shut off one of those guys, at least to some degree, if they do put a man coverage, I think that will be like make all the difference in the world. I think if he can get a few incompletions, and like I think if he can cover Tyreek Hill to some degree, I think that's going to be massive because Tyreek Hill is what transforms this Dolphins offense from being a good offense to being like a top 2 offense in the league. So yeah, I'm thinking Jay Alexander.
Yeah, I get what you're saying on that, and I'm trying to change my guy, but for some reason it won't let me edit again. But I originally put down Dobbs, but now that I've been thinking about it, I think I'm going to go with Keyshawn Nixon because Nixon's going to play that nickel guy, and it, Dobbs, Alexander's going to cover, whether it's Tyreek or whether it's Jalen or whatever. Somebody else is going to have to cover the other guy, and it's either going to be Razul or it's going to be Nixon. So I'm going to go with Nixon to see how he can handle the extra play time. Plus, I think he's going to break one. He was close tonight at breaking one on
It was
kickoff.
almost, yeah.
So he's either going to take a punt or a kick to the house here in the next couple of games. So I'm going to keep my eye on him.
Yeah, that's a really fun one actually. Yeah, I like that. How are you with your over-unders for this week? Where you at?
These are hard because we're getting to that time of year where we've covered a lot of stuff. We've really seen a lot of weird things happen. I'd say I'd do my Santa one again, but this will actually be Christmas Day. So there we go. We'll do the Santa one again. Over under 2.5 Santas in the crowd.
I didn't count the Santas that I saw this week, but it was definitely more than like was a 1.5 last week.
Yeah.
I think it'll have to be more than 2.5, surely.
I know there was at least one because I saw him posted on Twitter. So I know there was at least one in the stands. So I'm going to say 2.5. I'm going to lean over just because it will be Christmas Day when the game's played. So yeah, I'm going to go with that.
Yeah, I'll go over.
Let's go over under 200.5 passing yards given up by the Packers.
I think I'm going to have to say over for that one. Because, like Miami doesn't rush that much. I mean, they're not a rush forward team. They do rush, but I think it's all about this passing game. So
then let's change it. Let's go 250.5.
I'll still say over.
I'm going to call it under. I think they'll have a chance to get to Tua. And I think when you can get to Tua, he's not going to be that great.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's still able to get out and about, but I think you're going to rattle him.
He doesn't like to do that every single play. He wants to stay in the pocket.
Right. So I think between Preston and Kingsley and maybe even keep Quay as like a QB spy or whatever, I think they may be able to contain him enough that they'll rattle him. I mean, obviously they're going to give up their passing yards because, like you said, they do have Waddle and they do have Tyreek and what's their tight end's name? Is it still Gesicki?
Mike Gesicki, yeah, the tight end, yeah. He's alright.
He's not a blocker. He's a straight,
He's a vertical guy, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but he's still, the Packers always seem to struggle with those type of tight ends. So
you're not wrong. Yeah,
they're gonna get their yards, but I think they'll be able to limit them. Last one, yeah. I'm gonna give it to you. We'll go with it. Over under 1.5 touchdowns for Christian Watson.
Oh, I think I'm of the belief that now Christian Watson is the wide receiver one, or at the very, very least, he is the X. He is our X now. I think now that he's kind of like he's gotten himself that role, I think it's going to just be even more emphasis on trying to shut him down. I have no doubt in my mind that was a point of emphasis for the guys this week on the Rams was trying to stop Christian Watson. I think maybe he gets one, but I think getting two again against like a well-coached team, a better coached team than we have faced past couple of weeks, I think I'm going to go under.
I'm going to go over just because his coming out game was the Dallas game, and that was supposed to be a really bad game for the Packers. Mm-hmm. And being that we're kind of seeing this as a bad game for the Packers, again, I use quotes on a show that nobody's going to be able to see. Then maybe this will be his second coming out party, and so I'll give him the 2.
Mm, nice. Is there anything you want to say here before we finish up?
I'll make mention that hopefully, knock on wood, with scheduling wise, we've got guests planned for the rest of the year. So this will be the
Mhm,
last time it'll just be me and Nick. So look out for our guests. We are planning a giveaway also once we get,
mhm,
you know, I was hoping to start prior to Christmas, but both our schedules have been kind of wonky. So, you know, here hopefully after Christmas, maybe for the new year, we can, work our giveaway out. But, you know, don't be afraid to hit us up in comments or whatever and let us know if you guys want to see us try to bring in, certain guests or anything like that. I mean, we're starting to get a slow following of listeners, and we do want to hear from you guys. So,
mhm.
let us know.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've only just started, and like we like we both do this as like a bit of fun and whatever. But of course, if anyone's listening and is like interested in talking to us or like wants to hear anything specifically that like us talk about or talk to, absolutely, yeah, send us a message on the on the Outback Twitter. As always, you can find us on Twitter, me at Nicholas GRGR, Joe at Iowa underscore Joe 86, the podcast at Outback underscore Packers. Next week as well, we might be having special guest Janelle Mackey on. It's going to be very exciting. I think it's the first time we've actually mentioned who the guest is before they come on. So hopefully it doesn't bite us in the ass. But I'm very, very excited to talk to Jen, which is like what a fantastic Packers personality around the Twitterverse. So yeah, I can't wait.
And she's a closet Vikings fan. Don't let her fool you.
Until then, guys, see you later.